The movie starts in a dead city, wrecked by radiation. Almost everyone is gone, with only a few survivors left struggling to get by. We then meet our hero, a young woman named Anne. Every day, she suits up in protection and goes into the city for supplies. Once she has what she needs, she heads back to her safe haven, a farmhouse nestled in a green valley, protected by mountains and untouched by radiation. Here, life is almost normal, and takes off the suit, washes away any leftover radiation, cooks dinner from her supplies, eats and sleeps. The next day, and sets out with her dog to check their traps. Suddenly, the dog sniffs something out and takes off, with and following close behind. They end up near a weird-looking car, where a man named John Loomis is in a protective suit, checking for danger. His gadget shows no radiation, so he happily takes off the suit, breathes deeply, and jumps into a nearby waterfall, and sees this and races towards him, panicked, yelling for him to get out. John freaks out at her sudden appearance and points his gun, but Anne calms him down. She explains the water is dangerous, poisoned by radiation from the city. John gets scared, scrambles out, but it's too late. He throws up violently, weakened by the radiation. John stumbles back to his car, gets a shot, and tries to give it to himself, but his hands are shaking too much, and sees him struggling and helps him with the shot. John thinks he's a goner and begs and to burn his body after he dies, but Anne won't give up on him that easily. She takes him to her safe place and washes him thoroughly to get rid of any remaining radiation. She brings him inside, but his health keeps getting worse. The following days are a blur, and gives John medicine and takes care of him with all her might. One night, his fever spikes, and he falls into a restless sleep, whimpering in pain, and tries to cool him down with water, but his condition stays bad, and he's unconscious, and prays for John to get better. Thankfully, he opens his eyes and smiles weakly. One evening, they relax outside, and shows John a photo album. Her voice shakes a little as she tells him about her brother who went to find supplies and never came back. She also talks about her father who died from radiation sickness. Now, her only companion is her dog. John listens closely, feeling sorry for Anne's losses. Suddenly, John surprises Anne. He's a research engineer who worked for the government. He was even on the team that designed the radiation suit he wore when they first met. This makes Anne trust John more. The next day, Anne works in her fields. John comes to her and asks about the old tractor, and explains it stopped working because there's no fuel. John, the clever engineer, suggests going to a nearby gas station, and worries that without power, the pumps won't work. But John has a plan. They can pump the gas by hand. Intrigued, Anne agrees. They head to the gas station, determined, and pumps the gas with all her might, smiling as the tank fills. Happy with their success, Anne waves at John, who watches her through his rifle scope to be safe in this dangerous world. Back home, Anne thanks John for the gas idea. She admits she didn't think about pumping by hand. John laughs. Living alone can make you forget simple things. He then opens up about his past. Life in the government bunker felt trapped and boring. To be free and explore, he built his unique car and protective suit, even if it was risky. As John gets better, he starts to like Anne's simple life. One sunny day, she takes him to a clean pond. They're both excited to find clean water, and catches a big fish, and they cook and eat it together under the open sky. John feels lucky to have found Anne. Her safe haven is exactly what he wanted when he left the bunker. Winter is coming soon, and Anne worries. She tells John they need to stock up on food, a reminder of how close she came to starving last winter. To solve this, she wants to fix the freezers to store fish from the clean pond. Sadly, the generator that powered the freezers is broken. But John, the engineer, hearing this problem, John goes to the generator room and tries his best to fix it, but it doesn't work. So, he takes Anne to the waterfall and tells her a new idea. John wants them to make their own electricity from the waterfall. They need a big wheel that will spin when the water hits it, and loves the idea, so they return home to make a plan. John says they need a lot of wood to build the wheel, but there are no good trees nearby, so John suggests taking wood from the old church, and refuses. She believes in God strongly, and the church was a comfort to her when she was alone. Her father even built the church and worked there as a priest. John understands and respects her feelings, so they decide to find another way to fix the generator. One afternoon, while in works in the fields, John finds an empty supermarket. He starts drinking alcohol there. When it finds him, he's very drunk and mean to her, and takes him home, but his behavior upsets her a lot. The next morning, John apologizes for acting badly the night before, and wants to keep their relationship going, so she forgives him easily and tells him it's okay. To make him feel better, she cooks a nice dinner that night. She opens a bottle of wine and starts drinking. John is surprised because he knows she never drinks. They still have a good meal and dance together. Later, Anne takes John to her room and starts taking off her clothes. They're almost intimate, but John stops. He says it would change things between them and that he needs more time to think. A few days later, Anne walks her dog in the hills and meets a new person named Caleb. He looks very thirsty and weak. Even though they don't know each other, Anne feels sorry for him and takes him back to her farm. John sees Caleb and grabs his rifle because he's worried. But Anne calms John down and tells him Caleb isn't dangerous. Caleb explains that he was living with other people in a mine nearby, but the radiation reached them. Caleb explains his friends in the mine turned violent and started killing each other. He had to escape to survive, which is how he found this safe valley. Later, Anne talks to John in private. She insists they let Caleb stay inside their home, even though John isn't comfortable with it. After all, it's her house. That evening, they share dinner and scary stories about the terrible world outside. John remembers meeting a young boy on his journey north who was very sick from radiation. The boy was in so much pain. He begged John to end his suffering. John felt awful, but made the difficult decision to shoot the boy and leave his body by the road. After dinner, Anne shows Caleb his room and tells him to rest. John sees them together and warns Anne to be careful. He doesn't believe Caleb's story about working in the mines, and gets defensive and asks John why he never mentioned the sick boy before. John admits he wanted to tell her, but couldn't bring himself to do it. Then, he reveals a shocking truth. The boy was actually Anne's brother. He was so sick that John had to kill him to end his pain, and cries, but she understands John's difficult choice and forgives him. The next day, John and Caleb go hunting together, but there's a lot of tension between them. Caleb tells, and he shares her faith and admires her strength, which makes John jealous. Even though John and Caleb don't see eye to eye on everything, they manage to hunt a wild bird together and bring it back home. Later that night, they talk again about the water wheel project. Caleb doesn't like the idea of using wood from the church because it's a holy place. But surprisingly, Anne changes her mind and says they should do it anyway. She thinks maybe God wants them to have electricity since it's the only way they'll survive winter. The next day, all three of them start taking apart the church. While they work, Anne and Caleb get along really well, which makes John feel jealous. John pulls Anne aside and tells her how he feels. He says he respects her choices and she can be with whoever she wants, him or someone else, and doesn't know what to say after that, so she walks away without answering. The next day, they make a lot of progress on the water wheel. To celebrate, they have a special dinner with candles by the pond. They also play a game where they throw a bottle in the water and see who can find it first. John isn't a good swimmer, so he gives up right away and finds the bottle, but it slips out of her hand. Caleb is impressed by how well she did and offers to help her get it. John watches them dive into the water together, feeling very jealous. As soon as Anne comes back up, John blurts out that he wants to marry her and is completely surprised but also happy. They go to their room to talk more, but John is so drunk he falls asleep right away and feels lonely and really wants someone to show her affection. She tries to wake John, but he tells her to leave him alone in a rude way. Feeling sad and disappointed, Anne goes to Caleb's room. She's not sure who she likes more, John or Caleb, so she hesitates to knock on his door. But then, Caleb opens the door himself and pulls her inside. They kiss and end up spending the night together. The next morning, Anne eats breakfast with Caleb, which makes John nervous again. John and Caleb head out to finish the water wheel. On the way, John thanks Caleb for helping him see how much he loves Anne, even though Caleb doesn't quite get it. Even though they don't always agree, John and Caleb finish the water wheel and put it by the waterfall. Caleb is wearing his big, heavy suit when he stumbles while climbing. John saves him by grabbing a rope, but when they look at each other, John senses anger from Caleb. John worries Caleb wouldn't save him if the tables were turned. The scene suddenly ends. John comes back home by himself and admits she messed up the night before because of all the drinking. John forgives her easily, saying he understands why she felt lonely. He tells her Caleb left to find other people who might have survived. This makes her suspicious, so she goes outside to look for Caleb but can't find him anywhere. She starts to doubt John's story. The next few days are filled with sadness and suspicion for Anne. One evening, Anne discovers the generator working with power from the water wheel. The house has electricity again, and she's thrilled. The next day, she finds a piano stored away, saved from the church. She starts playing, lost in the music. John joins her, but his face shows guilt. He knows and has figured it out. He killed Caleb, and she doesn't trust him anymore. The movie ends with Anne playing the piano, her music expressing her sadness and disappointment. John listens quietly, understanding how much she's hurting.